This machine is a belt disc sander, and it's so called because it has a belt on one surface and a disc on another surface, and both of the belt and the disc are being driven by the same motor. The disc turns in a counterclockwise direction, whereas the belt moves from up to down toward the table. When you're using this machine, you should make sure always that your material is sitting on the table, whether you're using the belt or whether you're using the disc. You never sand something at an angle in this manner or an angle in this manner. If you must sand an angle like this piece of material, then you must set it on its side and sand on the side on an angle in that manner. Never sand in one spot on the belt. Always move back and forth on a belt so that the belt is worn evenly, also so that the belt does not heat up on one side or the other, so it starts to track off. You always make sure that you go full width of the belt. Okay, when you're using this machine, also besides going back and forth, you always keep your fingers at least 1 inch away from that belt. Never get your fingers closer than 1 inch to the belt so that you would have no possibility of sanding on your fingers. This machine can be used with the top off to sand the inside of concave surfaces, but this takes a special permission from your instructor. You must get permission from your instructor before you use the machine. You must also turn on the vacuum or the sawdust collector system before you start to use the machine, and you must get special permission then to take the top off to sand the inside of a concave surface, but that is a possibility. If you're using this machine, it's not a do-all machine, which means to say you don't just start sanding and sand off large amounts of material. You should use bandsaw probably to cut almost to a line, and then you should also have a line on your material to know where you're going to stop sanding. Okay? Remember that this machine takes special permission to use it to begin with. You have to have the vacuum or the sawdust collector system turned on. And if you want to take the top off to sand the inside of a concave surface, that takes special permission. So you must get permission to use the machine, special permission to take the top off. It must have the sawdust collector turned on to use the machine. This machine is a 1-inch sander grinder, and it's called a sander grinder because of the fact that you can sand with it, or you can substitute it for a grinder in some situations, like especially if using one of the non-ferrous metals, aluminum, brass, copper, etc. You can actually take materials off of those metals where you can't use a grinder for those because you load up your wheel. This machine in this shop is a Dayton, and most of the shops have maybe a different brand than this, but they're all essentially the same machine. As with most machines of this nature, the belt goes from top down toward a table where the material has to sit flat on the table. You cannot grind on an angle either direction, either up or down, but the material must sit flat on a table. And even though it's a small surface belt, you must move back and forth a little bit to make sure that you have your heat on the belt distributed evenly. Again, so far as safety is concerned, make sure that your fingers are at least 1 inch away. Do not grind anything on an angle. And do not use it as a do-all machine or a machine where you want to take off large amounts of material. If you want to take off large amounts of material, that's better done with a different machine, as for, say, a handheld hacksaw. So make sure that you sit flat on the table, Make sure that you keep your material moving back and forth, and don't use it as a dual machine.